Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the artistic, creative side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host, and this week I'm going to talk about a game that just came out, a game that I've been waiting for quite a while, watching with interest, a game that I think could have been made for me in many ways, a really pleasant experience. I wanted to get the podcast out early. There's some critical discourse about this game forming online, and I feel like it's been missing the point a little. So before all of that sets in place, I wanted to add my voice to the discussion that is going around about this game. I used to be a journalist, and so part of my job every day was interviewing people, combing news, going to places and finding out what was happening there, looking at art or listening to music, and getting my thoughts out pretty quickly, often on the same day, in online articles, or a few days later in print. It's always been an instinct that I've had, and I've always taken great pleasure in that role. There's something about experiencing things, processing things, talking to people, and turning that into something that amplifies things and lifts things up. I've always loved that, and I miss it now that I'm not a journalist. And I think this podcast is my way of continuing to do that, to fill that need. And so I'm really looking forward to talking about Season, A Letter to the Future today, because I think this is a wonderful game. I've had a great time with it. I finished it in just 3 sittings, finished it very quickly. They were all quite long. I spent a lot of time in this game, just looking at it, just listening to it, cycling through this beautiful world that has been created in this game. And I've been thinking about the game ever since. It's just one of those games that I played that just sits in the back of my mind while I'm working or while I'm going to sleep or cooking. I'm low-key thinking about Season, remembering the sounds of the game, the beautiful music that you can hear right now, which has a lovely dreamlike meditative quality to it. And while I do enjoy all kinds of games, and I review all kinds of games on this show, from indie games through to AAA games, from the Kentucky Route Zeros to the Lil Gator games to the God of Wars and Elden Rings, there is definitely a kind of game that made me start this podcast. It was an interest in what indie games are doing to kind of elevate what I knew as games. When I came back to games after a break, something had happened. There'd been a shift in the kind of games that were being made. People were making things like Journey and things like What Became of Edith Finch and Dear Esther, Kentucky Route Zero and Disco Elysium. And it felt like a big shift in what games were doing, and I find it fascinating. It's my most loved area of games, is the place where games touch upon art forms other than just pure games. And I love just pure games, I like smashing crates, and I like getting XP, and I like unlocking skill trees. I love Forza, I've enjoyed the Resident Evil games. But now and then one comes along that just really sticks with me and makes me very excited for the future of video games. The kind of games that could sit quite easily in a museum, that seem to contain all of things that I recognise from the arts, things that I recognise from theatre, literature, visual art, etc., from music, experimental music, electronic music, poetry. And that is really where my heart lies as a gamer, I think. Many of my favourite games are these multidisciplinary works that bring together all of these different strands and weave them into something interactive. It seems like a very rich little seam. It seems like a fault line between disciplines that is just absolutely rich with possibility. And Season is one of those games. It's not a perfect game, but it is a really good one. And I'm going to be talking about that one today. Before I get on to Season, I will briefly mention, as I always do, this is a patron-supported show, so whether you're a first-time listener today, or if you've been listening for a while, you can join the Patreon at patreon.com/gaminginthewild for $1 a month, or more if you like. You'll get bonus episodes, and you'll get an invite to our Discord community, where there is a whole bunch of lovely people talking about games every day, sharing what they're playing and so forth. It's been a busy week in the Discord. We started a fantasy critic league, and so 9 people are all drafted up. We've got our first draft games in. That's going to be a really fun thing that we do this year. I would also like to mention that one of the patrons of the show, Dovetail True 17, made a Steam playlist, like a curator page, that has in it all of the games that have ever been reviewed on this show, bar a couple that we dropped because they were negative reviews. But this show tends to focus on positive reviews, or at least games that have something interesting about them, something interesting to talk about. So there are hundreds of games on that Steam list. I'm going to leave a link in the description. And if you use Steam, you're welcome to follow that list. It will be updated with new games that come on the show, and there are subsections for games of the year, and then a giant list of all of the games. So thanks very much to Dovetail for doing that. It was really nice to see this selection of games on a curator page on Steam. And you can use that if you've got a Steam Deck, if you're a PC player, or a Mac player like me, then you can use that one. I think that will be a really good resource, and it was lovely to see. So thanks very much to Dovetail for doing that. And if you would like to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/gaminginthewild. I'll put a link to that as well. And with all of that said, let's move on and talk about this wonderful game, Season: A Letter to the Future. So Season: A Letter to the Future is a game by Scavengers Studio, a French-Canadian studio, I believe, who have made one game before. It was a very different game, some kind of battle royale. This game came out on PlayStation and PC only. I played it on PlayStation 5. I was supplied with a code, so thank you very much to the publisher for that. I think before I talk about it, I have to just mention at the very least, as due diligence, that this game had a bit of a troubled development. There were some accusations in the studio in which women came forward and accused the CEO of toxic behaviour and abuse. That CEO resigned. Another CEO left. There was an investigation into it. There is a lot of news out there about it. I'm not going to try and parse that story for you, but it doesn't feel right to talk about the game without at least mentioning it. So there are some good stories on gamesindustry.biz if you would like to know about what happened in Scavengers Studio. The game was a little bit delayed. It came out this week on January 31st, 2023. It has been reasonably well received on Metacritic. It has 77 on PlayStation and 82 on PC, but the reviews are still coming in. How Long to Beat has it at 5 to 10 hours. I think I played over 10 hours of this game, but I took it very, very slow. I think if you beelined it, you could rocket through this quite quickly. But I would really recommend taking this game very, very intentionally slowly and just soaking it in. I think the best way to play this one is to take your time with it. Turn up the sound, turn down the lights, and just really absorb yourself in it, which is what I did. The developers say, experience a story as you witness the last breath of a season. Document, photograph, and record sounds. Through a bicycle journey, collect a vision of the world around you for the future. And I say of this one, a troubled season is coming to its end, and afterwards the world will move on and forget. As Estelle, we're invited to bicycle through the lush roads and trails, forests and hills of a valley that will soon be gone, documenting the sights, sounds, and lives we find there for an imagined future. You may have seen Season. It was on PlayStation State of Play last year, and there were some really amazing shots in there of you as the main character, Estelle, who is a black girl who is wearing these round mirrored shades with short cropped hair and wearing a really nice outfit with a white shirt and high-waisted trousers and a leather bag with badges on it. She's a pretty cool main character. I think she is largely unnamed, but I've seen her referred to in some places as Estelle, so I don't know if she was at some point named and then they decided not to name her. But she's a very, very cool character, and in the trailer we saw Estelle walking around, recording, photographing, and cycling down hills in this widescreen world. And it was a very striking trailer with lovely music. The game has a phenomenally good soundtrack by Spencer Doran that mixes together the sounds that you are hearing in worlds, such as wind chimes and wooden wind ornaments and the sounds of the environment, with just really gorgeous meditative music of various different kinds. It's a really good soundtrack. And Estelle has a wonderful voice performance as well, a very thoughtful voice performance by Maureen Adelson. And that really, really helps with the game. And it really helped people to hook on to the idea of what this game was. And it starts with a really, really striking beginning that I absolutely love. I've heard a couple of people in reviews that did not like the beginning and found it slow. I am quite the opposite. The game begins when you wake up in your family home and you can hear sounds, you can hear singing coming from another room. You get out of bed and you can walk around and just look at things. You can look at pictures. You can look at a picture of your father, and Estelle will tell you that he has passed away and long gone. You can look at a few photographs and possessions and just get little snatches of information about the village that you are in, Caro Village, the kind of village that it is. It's a village for healing. And you start to learn a little bit about our protagonist and about her family situation and about where she lives. And you come into the kitchen and there is a lovely little moment where your mother is singing, she has her back to you, she's cooking, you can hear the bubbling. And you kind of just freeze in the moment and you're given a choice. You can let the moment continue or you can talk to your mother. And I let the moment continue, and then she turns around eventually and notices you. But right from the off, this was a striking moment to me. It really snapped me in. It felt very real. There is a certain intimacy to sharing space with someone, to living with someone, to hearing them humming in another room. It's something that I love. It's something that a lot of people love, I think. And right from the first moments of this game, I was getting a sense of intimacy and quietude and personal moments happening in front of me. And it set the tone really well, I thought. And you and your mother talk a little. You find out that today is the day that you are going to leave Caro Village for the first time in your life. The village is a sealed-off village where people come to heal. The outside world does not come and no one leaves. But you, as Estelle, have a curiosity in your heart. You also learn that this world is a world that is divided into seasons. And we learn that seasons aren't like the seasons that we know, of spring and winter and so forth, but rather they are like moments in time that stretch over decades, like an era, like a little era. And this era is coming to an end. And you want to go out and find out what the personality and the character of this season was. There have been seasons before. There was a season of war. There was a golden season. And this season seems to be a listless kind of season. And so you want to go out into the world, to take your camera, to take your recorder, to take your journal, and to document the dying days of this season for the future. Your mother is loath to let you go, of course, but she understands. And you do a little ritual together where you have to collect things that are important to you. You have to collect memories, and you will combine them into a powerful amulet that will protect you from forgetting, because apparently that is something that happens out in the world. And so you walk around the kitchen, you're looking at things like a wax candle, like pictures, like a ginger drink. And Estelle has memories connected to all of these things. You can pick some of them, you combine them into the amulet. It starts to glow, you put it on, and you are protected. And there was a lot to love about this sequence for me. I loved the absorb the moment, study the scene kind of choice that you were given. I love how personal it is. I love how poetic and quiet it is. And the voice acting is just phenomenally good. Like, your mother has such a soothing, crackling voice that I found myself, you can kind of press the X button to make the next line come quicker. And often in games, I will click through dialogue, in even cutting off the voice acting to just get through the text. But in this game, I felt like hitting that button allowed me to kind of conduct the cadence of the conversation. And I left in pauses, like I let the voice acting finish, and then I took a breath for a moment, and then I hit the button to get the next voice line. And it felt like leaving space in the conversation, leaving space between the lines, and letting the words breathe. And something about the sound, the look, the voice acting, the text itself, the themes of memory, just right away I felt this game. I felt quite emotional, even in that opening section of it. I think it's wonderfully well judged. as just a little intro to this world and to your protagonist and to your mission in life. After that, you go out into Caro Village. It's pretty empty. There's been a big party to say goodbye to you the night before. You walk around the village and it's quite beautiful. There's a big viewpoint looking out across rolling valleys beneath you. This village really is built into the mountain. And in this village, you are taught the mechanics of the game. You have a quite slow walk and then like a jog to run a little faster. And there are various things that you can do. You can document the world around you. This is what you're going to spend most of your time doing in season. You can do this by recording audio. If you hit the triangle button, you will point a little mic around you. When it lands on something that is particularly loud, you will get haptic feedback in time with the sound and with different qualities to the vibrations in the controller. Really like that. Or you can just record the sky, or you can just record the river. But when it's something notable for the game, you'll get a little vibration. You can also photograph the world. You get a camera if you hit square. You can zoom in, you can focus, you can filter. You can walk around whilst you're holding the camera to get your composition right. The shots are Polaroid sized, and you can get some beautiful, beautiful photographs in this. I kind of wished at the end of the game that I could export all of my in-game photographs, because I would print some of those out. Honestly, you are creating art in this game when you use the camera. You can also make observations. This involves just walking up to stuff. You see a little button prompt, you hit X, and Estelle will interact with it. That means just if it's a water fountain, she might talk about the water. She'll say, we have a lot of clean water here, suggesting that elsewhere in the world they do not. You get one really interesting early game choice. There's a big tree in the town square of Caro Village, and people tie wishes onto it. You aren't supposed to read the wishes, and at the party last night, people tied their wishes for you and your journey onto the tree. But a couple have fallen down. You can choose whether you want to read them or not. Of course, I read them. They were quite lovely little sentiments. And then you get to keep one. You read 3, you choose the one you like best, you keep it. And what you do with these is that you can combine them into your journal. And the journal is where Estelle will record her journey. So this is the letter for the future that's in the title of the game. Each location in the game has a spread in the journal, a 2-page spread. You can leaf through them using the shoulder buttons. You can glue things into your journal, so you can paste in there pictures of a place that you're in. In the Caro Village spread, you paste in the wish slip. You paste in recordings that you've made of sleep chimes that people listen to. The village is covered in chimes because people set these chimes up, and then the whole village takes like a siesta. So the village is empty, the sleep chimes are everywhere, it's a lush sound environment. You record that, you paste it into your journal. You can also paste in Estelle's observations that you've collected, which appear as pencil handwritten notes. So for example, her observation about the water, you can take a picture of the fountain or a recording, paste them in, and then paste that pencil text, we have good water here. And so you're piecing together, you're choosing what to find interesting. There is limited space on the spread. You can size things up and down and arrange them. And I guess it is like scrapbooking. But at the same time, you're really making decisions. Every time you put something in, you're also leaving something out. And so you are deciding what is interesting about the world. And I absolutely love this. I've often said about journalism or writing or art, in my opinion, that the hard part is really choosing what to find interesting. There is so much in the world to work from, and really choosing the things that you want to use and filtering the rest out becomes this state that you are seeking, where you're in a flow, where you are noticing things in the right way, cultivating a quality of attention. And that seems to be what this game is trying to simulate, which is just gold to me. I've never seen this done in a game, and I've rarely seen it talked about. So it was lovely to see it here. And when you've filled in a spread, you've pasted in 5 memories from the location, the first location being Caro Village. Estelle will have a little revelation. She'll have an inspiration. She will then look over what you've pasted into the journal. She will talk about her impressions, her wider impressions of the place that you're in. You will get some bonus things that you can then put into the journal to finish the spread. This includes some like pretty little things like stamps and stickers, little decorations, also a final thought that you can make space for, and sometimes something extra like a drawing of the place or something like that. So that's how the game works. You go from location to location. Each one is named. And when you get to a new one, you can look around, notice things, photograph things, record things, paste them all into your journal, and then you have recorded that place. And that's really what the game is all about. It's about recording moments, it's about recording places, and writing a letter to the future. And I absolutely loved this structure for the game, and I took great pleasure in doing it. Every new location I completed, I took great pleasure in arranging my thoughts, or Estelle's thoughts rather, arranging the pictures, choosing what to put in, choosing what to leave out, and making this beautiful document of this world. And a big question that I had coming into this game actually was, how well will this gameplay hang together? There have been games before where you record sound. I think the one that everyone thinks of straight away is Miles Morales, where you're recording the city sound. There was also some of that in Norco. They used recording sound as a puzzle-solving mechanic, playing recordings to people and so forth. I didn't love those uses of sound in those games, and here I do. I'm really happy that is the case, because looking around the world for visual cues like the photographs and scanning the world with a microphone for sound, it can be tedious. There have been a lot of games where that wasn't great. I think of things like Miles Morales, I think of things like Senua's Sacrifice, where you're looking for environmental symbols that you match with runes. They are ways of making you look at the world for longer, and I get that is something that works from a game design point of view. You want people to spend time in your carefully constructed worlds. I get that. But sometimes I feel like they are holding me back a little and making me stay longer than I wanted to. I was worried that would be the case in Season, but it's really not. Collecting and observing here is pretty free form. There are usually many things that you can observe, or more than you need at least, in order to complete an area. But as you notice things like a broken tree, or a red bottle and two glasses on a stone wall, like a scene where two people sat and drank together, or a ragged poster peeling off a wall, or a pile of paper on the ground, you can choose whether or not to take an interest in it, whether or not to photograph it, whether or not to make a recording. Sometimes, if you do so, Estelle will tell you something about it. You'll get a memory, you'll get a couple of lines of voice acting. Sometimes you won't. And I think that this is really good. This encourages you to try out observing the world to a degree that you want to. You will never really struggle to fill your notebook and to move on from place to place and to complete an area. I'm not even sure that you have to complete the areas to progress, honestly. So it's quite free and open. But I found that what this did was to encourage a sense of attunement in me, where I was looking around at the world, noticing things and deciding whether or not to discard them or to take interest in them. And it felt intuitive and desirable rather than something I was being made to do for my progress. I started thinking that if I look more, I will learn more. And so I slowed right down and started to notice the details of the world around me in a way that felt a little bit like meditation. That's what you're trying to do when you meditate, is to slow things down, to take things in and to let the world be how it is. And the game gave me that. It gave me this sense of calm, a sense of being the right way in the moment. And that's a pretty powerful thing for a game to inspire, I think. And there is one more major mechanic in the game, that's the cycling. And so this is the part of the game where you leave Caro Village behind. You head down to the edge of the village, down a trail around the side of the mountain, to a big ceremonial-looking gate and a tunnel. There's a little bike workshop there. All of these locations are so damn evocative. I'm not like a big bike person, but seeing all of these bikes hanging up on the wall or being suspended from rails, all of the tires and the tools, felt so evocative somehow. Maybe it's because it's tying into that early game theme of freedom and of leaving. And there are wind chimes. There are always wind chimes in this game. And I started to feel these waves of nostalgia that didn't belong to me somehow. Nostalgia for places that I hadn't been. Nostalgia that belongs to this character and this world. Maybe there is some fondness for bikes that we all have. Maybe it does connect to, childhood bikes and replacing tyres and stuff. But you pick out a bike, there are 3 for you to choose from, just with different colours, and you head down the tunnel. It was a really exciting moment in the game, I think, to be heading out. It had set this up very well. I got butterflies in my stomach and the music swelled. It was really exciting to be leaving the village and to see what was out there in the world. The things that we had glimpsed from the village balcony. There were cranes and there were structures and there were valleys and a glittering sea. And I was really excited to go and see what was there. But the game teaches you how to cycle. It's pretty cool. You press down L2 and R2 for the left pedal and right pedal. You see the pedaling happening on the screen. You get resistance based on the slope and surface that you are bicycling on. And then when you hit full speed, Estelle just takes over, and the speed goes into autopilot, and you're just controlling the bicycle's direction at that point. In a way that feels really nice. There is a nice sort of coasting freedom to biking, and I think that they nailed that here. The first place that you come to is a disused post office in a courtyard. There is paper blowing around on the ground. There is a little bell tinkling in the wind. Everything feels really steeped in nostalgia here. It's like a dead letter office. It hasn't been used for a long time. We start learning about the world. We learn that Caro Village has been sealed off because of something bad happening out there, even to correspondence, and that no one comes down here anymore. So it's like a disused post office, and we can rifle through some mail, read some postcards. There is a giant pulley with cable cars going down into the valley below, disused and creaking. You can record that creaking. You can record the bird song from the birds that have made nests in this old structure. And we see a table with 3 postcards. One is for Caro Village, and it says, "Don't try to visit Caro Village. It's not that kind of destination." And the postcard is written from someone called Conway, which just must be a shout out to Kentucky Route Zero's delivery man, the main character of that game. Definitely a little shout out. Conway is not a common name, I think. There is also a postcard from Tieng Valley, a nice looking place with fields, people sitting in fields, and there's a message on the back of that one too, just personal messages, small messages about the world. And finally there is one from the Asian Islands with a question mark. The Asian Islands? I don't know why the question mark is there, as if it is in question whether or not it really exists. And that's kind of a recurring theme for me, I think, this feeling of this place existing on the edge of memory, of forgetting, of everyone seeming to forget, of questioning what is the reality of this place? What will it mean when the season ends? Will it still exist in our memories? Will it exist in our minds? Will it exist in history? History seems very patchy in this game. And this all adds up to a really powerful atmosphere where it's dreamlike. It feels like you're on the edge of a dream. And after you have completed this scrapbook page about the post office, you leave Caro Village for real, and you go out on your bike and you go down a big hill into a wide valley. You can see the sea glittering. You can see those cranes getting closer. It's really, really exciting moment, like walking out onto that ledge in Breath of the Wild. You really do feel that the world is your oyster, and the game is really beginning. The next part of the game, there's a little bit of a strange decision here. It's one of the few big critiques I have of the game. I was going to save them for the end, but I should sprinkle them in. There is a time jump shortly after this very impressive moment where you really do feel let loose in the game. You feel free in the game. You're itching to go and explore. There is a time jump. Estelle suddenly says, "I've been on the road for so long." There's a cutscene. She's tired, and it's raining. And then you arrive at the main area of the game, and this I thought was not so great. I didn't feel connected to Estelle's weariness yet. I was still full of optimism and excitement at leaving the village and going out into the world. I think to keep me in that sense of the journey, even if the places were relatively close together, even if you just rode for a few minutes through a changing landscape and arrived at the next place, I think it would have really felt so much better It really, really would have set you up for the main meat of the game. It would have kept that optimistic feeling in you. I felt that the game assumed some weariness that it had not earned, and that I, as a player, did not buy into. But you do flash forward, and then you enter the main area of the game. This is a valley, the Tieng Valley. You learn that the valley will soon be flooded as a broken dam, as a crunchy old dam is detonated. The dam was built to clear the valley, but the dam is crumbling. It doesn't seem like anyone has any technical or technological thought anymore. It almost seems like people in this world are, for some reason, dreamers, somehow lost and not really capable of that big scale of operation anymore. In fact, one of the first things that you see when you come into this valley is a huge old crumbling aqueduct or viaduct. And it has a really funny sign that I think speaks to the themes of memory and forgetting. It says, "These atmospheric ruins have been designated a symbol of the unfathomable nature of the past," which I absolutely love. It's like the people have given up trying to remember why this is there, or where it came from, or how it fell down. And I'm not going to go through the story beat by beat at this point, because I would like you to experience the game for yourself. But the Tieng Valley is a pretty wide area. There are two big steep slopes that meet in a river at the bottom of the valley. It is littered with sites, such as a dig site, a closed industrial site where something has been happening, some mining, a fruit farm, a sort of a hilltop farm with steps where crops and crows and animals are. There is an old gas station, and I think that there are very few places more immediately atmospheric than disused gas stations. I don't know why. Like the Ed Ruscha paintings, it's just something like dilapidated America, roadside something, some kind of nostalgia. There is a graveyard that you can go and investigate, an artist's studio, a shrine, a monastery that is closed, and the gates only open at nightfall. And so you have a day to go and explore this valley. There is no day-night cycle or anything like that. There are story events that will move the time onwards from bright sunny morning to shady afternoon and so forth. And you really just bicycle around the valley. It's cut up into areas like the Caro Village, where you'll have to look for clues. You'll have to assemble scrapbook pages. You get clues from place to place about what's going on in the world. You meet a little guard guy who tells you about the story of the valley, and he tells you there are a few people dotted around down there too. So there are a couple of NPCs that you can go and talk to, all of whom have wonderful stories that I'm not going to spoil for you, wonderful voice acting, and they are so few, and the valley is so big. You spend so much time wheeling around on your bicycle through forests and down stretches of dirt track under shady trees, winding your way up hills to hilltops and viewpoints where you can stop and sketch in your notebook, that when you actually do find someone, it feels very significant. It really is like finding someone in the middle of the wilderness. There is real pleasure in finding these characters, and I absolutely love the way that they've used these characters. I love the situations that you find them in. I love the voice acting and dialogue. I love the situations of their lives, the reasons that they have chosen to not evacuate with all of the other people who have gone. You see evidence of that. You see a bus stop with folding chairs and a loudspeaker and a slide display explaining why the evacuation is happening and all of that sort of thing. So it is all set up to feel a little bit like a ghost town in a really cool way. I think there is some sleight of hand here, like Caro Village being on siesta and the valley being evacuated means that they really didn't have to make a lot of NPC characters in this. There are only about 10 characters in the whole game, but I think that it serves the game well. It adds to a feeling of loneliness, which I really enjoy. I love that feeling of being alone in the wilds, and it's all very effective. I will say about the valley itself that it's a real mixture of culture, of sound, of different typography and design that you see, of different architecture that you see. And I have seen a criticism of this as being like a kind of a sort of haphazard mix-up of multiculturalism. I think that was in the Guardian review. But I don't think that's the case, actually. I felt that this place was like a mix and match for sure, but I found it to be very effective because it looks almost like the Swiss Alps in landscape. But you see these kind of pagoda-like structures. You see these almost Japanese shrines. There are wind chimes and instruments everywhere. You'll find radios and televisions that are playing TV stations that seem perhaps English or American. There is graphic design that seems to have come from all different centuries and schools of design. And something about that really worked for me. It melded together into this very strange, out-of-place place. It felt like many, many snatches of memories from my own travels. Like you could see these little things and remember them from being out there in the world, but just in different countries and different continents. And that to me added to this very dreamlike quality that the game has. It feels like it's happening in the world, but also outside of it. It's like a hypnotic kind of place. I don't know quite how to put it into words, but I tried my best. There is something really, really lovely about how this game takes so much from the world and puts it together into a place that just feels magical. And it also adds to the deepening sense of mystery as you explore. There is never really resolution, I would say. You'll find statues to old gods. You will find sites of science and industry. And you can try and piece together the history of the ages. What has happened in this age? What is this the age of exactly? You can try and divine the purposes of these gods. Look at the old structures and think, where do these fit into the timeline? But I think that there was a point in this game where I stopped trying to play detective in a way, and I felt that that was really helpful for my experience of this game. I'm not sure that I'm supposed to be the detective here. I'm supposed to be the observer here. And so it's not about the science. It's not about being a historian so much as taking it all in. And I felt that that was a really lovely position to be put in as the player, actually, just tasked only with observing all of the different things that are around you. You can choose to interpret them if you wish. I'm sure that some people will. I'm sure there will be a lot of Reddit scratchings and people playing with a notebook. And I'm here for that. Like, I will read that material when it comes out. I would love to see the timeline of this game, but for my own experience, it's not what I tried to do here, and I think that I had a better time for that. And I am reaching the point where I can't really talk about what happens in the game without spoilers, but there are a few characters that you meet down here. There's a mother called Sophon and her son called Kochi. There is an old monk that you might meet and an artist called Matura. And I did want to talk about Matura a little bit. She's an artist who has lived in the valley her whole life. She's like a woman who is losing her sight. She's an old woman. And the characters in this game are really interestingly illustrated. They look out of scale in a way that reminds me of Studio Ghibli, like the old matron of the bathhouse in Spirited Away. You know that she's so much bigger than all of the other characters. And that's something that I wasn't really expecting from this game. I wasn't expecting this magical realism. I think I was expecting just realism. I was expecting like a grim-feeling tale where you document a world that's vanishing as a very clear global warming kind of metaphor. And I think the game does function as that, but it's couched in this very interesting magical realist world with spiritual traditions, with strange magical-seeming minerals, and with just these outscale characters that don't seem to belong to our world. And all of these little details, like the beautiful graphics, the sound bath that you are in with birdsong, with wind, with bubbling water, with insects rustling, the outscale characters that you meet, the clouds across the sky, the changing time of day that never seems to end, the strange sensation that there is a kind of a doom hanging over this place and that you're one of the last people that will ever see it. Just the magic of all of that, tied together with the scrapbooking, with the documentation, the photography, the recording of sounds that asks you to linger in these locations. It all adds up to an incredibly powerful mood that just settles over you when you're playing this game. I really went somewhere when I was playing Season. I played it in 3 sittings, and they were 3 multiple-hour sittings where I really was just entirely absorbed in the game. I faded out of time myself and I just faded into the screen. It's the kind of video game experience that I look forward to a lot and that I really treasure when it rarely happens. And so to round off by talking about some of the strengths and weaknesses of the game, I've got a few notes here for that. In the good section, there is a warmth to the game. I think the voices, the sounds, the colours, the drawing, the feeling of nostalgic reverie that I got in this game. A rare feeling of being very much in the moment. It's rare in life, never mind in video games. I love the sketches that you do. I love the tactile nature of scrapbooking, of taping things in, of using your microphone, of gathering this picture, and then getting to experience the thoughts that the character has about them. I love the feeling of cycling downhill, of streaking around the valley, even if it's not always seamless in practice, passing by all of this wonderful architecture, picking up bits of history, tradition, religion, all of that stuff from posters and books. Such a strange, mixed-up melange of stuff that you experience. I loved that the game felt out of time, out of space, one step out of reality, just like somewhere that you would imagine on the edge of sleep. It has a very effective, dreamlike quality. I love the art style. It's impressionistic, it's colourful, it's rich. It doesn't always have a great frame rate. It's a bit sably in that respect, but it's very, very memorable nonetheless. I think the music was very, very powerful throughout. A big shout out to the creator of this soundtrack, Spencer Doran. There are some great quotes out there from Spencer about designing the sound for this game. As for the negatives, I do have quite a few. I decided to leave them until the end because I just wanted to kind of let loose about what I love about the game first. I would say that the early game pacing is an issue. I wish they didn't do the time jump, as I mentioned. There is a little bit of awkwardness in the journal. When you paste your 5 clues and have that inspiration, the camera will do a slow pan over the pages of the book, but at that stage they are half empty often because you haven't finished yet. You haven't gotten all of the best pictures that you want or had the final revelations or gotten your cute little stickers. So it's an odd decision to have that cinematic over the pages of your sketchbook when you're not done, so it will often be lingering over a blank paper. That's strange to me. I wonder if developers imagine people using the journal differently, in a more consistent manner. I definitely fell into a pattern of collecting clues until I got an on-screen notification that I had enough clues to unlock the inspiration for a location. So I wonder if there was a little bit of playing with structure of how to encourage people to use the journal that led to this slightly unsatisfying cinematic sequences on the pages. Not a big deal, but something went a bit awry there. I've also got a little bit about linearity and freedom. This is, in some ways, a place where you are free. You can just drive around, bicycle around the valley in any order that you want, pretty much. It's also kind of linear in other ways, though. Like if you try to walk to the edge of the road and go into the bushes, you'll just hit like an invisible wall. But that doesn't just go for random boundary testing that we all do in games. Sometimes you'll see these interesting looking places like an opening in the bushes next to a beautiful waterfall, and it just seems like there's going to be something there. But then you walk into it and instead you just get a little bit of jank, a little bit of plants in the camera, and having to kind of jank your way out again back onto the beaten path. And I think that that's at odds with what the game is trying to do. It's trying to make you feel free, but I often felt that my curiosity was being disencouraged outside of quite set guidelines. So you have to surrender to that a little bit. It can lead to a more passive playstyle than I would have liked. It's not so much the Zelda looking for Korax vibe as the let's continue along this road until I know I'm supposed to stop and take photographs kind of vibe, which is a little bit of a shame. It would have been nice to fold in a little bit more opportunity for player expression, like Sable did, you know. You really do get to carve your way across that landscape in Sable. Here it's like a small network of roads, and you have to surrender to that a little bit. I wanted to stretch my legs a little more. There is some jank in this game. The bike collision isn't great. If you crash the bike, you just hop off it immediately. You have to turn and get back onto it. That will sometimes happen when you are trying to cross a bridge and you just clip something, you do this immediate stop. And if you've just streaked down a hill towards the bridge, clipping into something, scenery, and then popping off your bike and having to get on again and pedal again, can kill the moment. The camera is not always your friend in this game, especially in close quarters. It will clip through scenery. It will be blocked by plants and so forth. Technically, the game is a little held together with scotch tape, similar to when Sable released, although not that bad. It has very pixelated textures when you look at written signs and letters, which is confusing to me because there is such a tactile feel to the game. You would think if you pick up a piece of paper, you'd really be able to see, the pen's indentation in the paper because it's such a big part of the game. But actually, they are very, very low-res pixelated textures on letters and signs that you are definitely intended to look at and that are blown up on the screen. The game chugged on PS5. It was framey at times. The pedaling tutorial when I first started riding the bike stuck on screen for a solid 2 minutes, blocking out the title card of the game, which was a real bummer. That also happened in the demo, so I'm surprised that wasn't fixed for this release. I will also say that some of the themes felt a little underexplored. If you are looking for that, there are light themes here of ecology, with the mining, of war, with the memorials that you will see, of politics, and that sort of thing. So it's touching on heavy themes, but they are very, very lightly grazed against. And so in a game that seems to want to say something, I didn't feel like it did really say anything about any of those issues. I have seen people criticizing for that, but that's the last of my negative notes, and I do want to counter myself on that one by saying, whilst it does suggest that there might be more there beneath the surface of this world, the history of this world, maybe it will come out, maybe there will be those Reddit board discussions, but that's not how I chose to enjoy this game. I didn't feel like a historian. I was arranging clues about the world, sure, the past, the people, drawing my conclusions, and that felt a little bit like my thought process in understanding life. You see little things, you hold on to them, you put them together, and suddenly it becomes something more. That process itself felt valuable to me. It was a thrilling opportunity to do that, to combine little clues from here and there, sounds, memories, texts, a line of dialogue from someone, and to kind of let that wash over you. I enjoyed like cycling between the moments of investigation and just thinking about what I just heard, looking at the sky and thinking about a poem someone just told me or a memory they related to me. There was a lovely feeling of sinking into the landscape, letting the feeling of the game soak into me. And so I'm not mad about any of its shortcomings. I'm more grateful for the experience that I had playing this game. It was lovely. It was a dream. That is Season, a letter to the future. So I hope you enjoyed that review of Season, a Letter to the Future. I'm going to put this podcast out today a little early, 48 hours earlier than usual. And I am putting it out early because I'm low-key mad with the coverage that I have read and heard about Season, a Letter to the Future. When I'm really in love with a game, I can't wait to hear what other people thought about it. And I've listened to some reviews, some from people I know, such as friend of the show Brad. He didn't love it, which is fair enough. And elsewhere on the MinnMax show, of which I'm a patron, and there was a discussion on the MinnMax show that got under my skin a little bit, where the host, Ben Hansen, kind of skated over the game, thought it was a smart game, in inverted commas, thought it was a slow game, did not play it, really didn't get very far into it, and yet still decided to dump on it, without having really tried to understand it, without trying to engage with it on its own terms. And I'm seeing some of that reflected across games media. And the reason that I opened the show talking about journalism and the instinct to analyze and to express is that putting out this podcast early, this is my little attempt to do that. This is an artwork that I really love, this video game. And whilst this is only a small podcast, it's my way of trying to help this game out, put my message about it out into the world, share my experience of this game, And so I really hope that you enjoyed that review season. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think of the game. You can join us on the Discord by becoming a patron. That's patreon.com/gaminginthewild. You can talk to me on Twitter at gaminginthewild. Thanks to everyone who leaves reviews and ratings on the podcast and likes and shares, who shares it with friends, who spreads the word about the show. And most of all, thanks very much to my patrons. I love talking to you all every day, and I really appreciate all of you. I'll be back next week with a new episode. I think it might be about a game called The Forest Quartet, a 1-hour game about similarly thoughtful, similarly about loss in some ways, similarly about memory. I had a lovely time with The Forest Quartet. It was only an hour long, and I think I could probably talk about it for that length of time, or maybe it will be about something else. We'll see how it goes. One of the reasons that I don't plan ahead is because I think the podcast is at its best when I've just finished a game, when the thoughts are fresh, and when I feel able to talk about it at the fullest before I've started other games and started to lose my grip on those instant memories from coming off of a fresh playthrough, you know. I'm very much coming off a fresh playthrough of Season. But either way, I'll be back next week, and I hope you'll come along with me. Take care of yourselves and each other, and bye-bye for now.